Jacksonville. The child was born who couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts. Poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talk for hours. It was a barefoot history, this land of flowers.
From WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network, the week that was. On the 3rd August 2017. We're now through July. This is incidentally our first program for the month of August. The week that was there. We also have coming this week on our network the Numbers Man part, This Week in Economics, and an open source report. We'll be talking about security, what happened at Capital One, security in general, the open source movement in particular. Nonetheless, we'll recap some of the week here. The Trump administration officially withdrew from the medium-range missile treaty, that was signed by President Gorbachev and President Reagan at the time, eliminating short-range missiles, and also addressing the problem of verification. According to the Trump administration and NATO, well, the situation is that the Russian Federation is developing medium-range missiles. What they mean by this, roughly in U.S. terms, about 300 miles or so. And thus they need to get other nations into the regime, including China. Well, the problem here is the Russian Federation and the U.S. have thousands of these missiles, either active or in storage. China, according to one report we heard, has about 300 of them. And some of the other nations out there, India, Pakistan, etc., only have several hundred. Well, you don't need very many if you decide to use nuclear warheads on these missiles. Anyway, that was a very big development, and at the same time, there are protests later today in Moscow. They're protesting city council elections. This sort of goes with the theme of the late Thomas Tip O'Neill, a congressman and was Speaker of the House from Boston. All politics being local, and these are pretty much the city council election in Moscow. Not a lot of power there, just not exactly ceremonial, but a few steps from it. And at the same time, in Hong Kong, demonstrations are there against the government in Hong Kong. It is basically a province of China that the civil liberties, structure there is a little bit different, much more bourgeois. But you hear in the monopoly press, including the BBC, they call it a pro-democracy. But the problem there is, what type of democracy are we actually talking about? And that is a big issue, an issue in the U.S. What type of democracy are you talking about? If you're talking about a democracy where there's no national health care, we were listening to NPR, no, actually BBC report about a small town in Tennessee, the medical center closing there, and now there is no medical center. Over 100 miles is the nearest one, and it happens. They actually had a for-profit one. Tennessee is one of these states that you can have for-profit medical centers, and some you cannot. They're supposed to be not for profits, although they can make a profit and then distribute it back to the patients, but it's sort of more sleight of hand than anything else. But because this little small town hospital was a for-profit center, it closed because primarily you have some Medicare patients that pay more, and then you have some Medicaid patients, but there was no expansion of Medicaid in Tennessee under the Affordable Care Act. Therefore, the monies are not there, and some people have so-called private insurance. Those are people that work for the schools and certain other government-type jobs in that area, because there's very little industry there. They had some button factories that made clothing, but those are long gone. So it's one of many, many towns in the mountains of Tennessee that are suffering, and very little can be done there in terms of sustainable development in those areas, at least under the present regime. That they are basically dying areas. The health care is not there, and as one of the doctors who was there was saying that some of the illnesses people suffer are treatable, but unfortunately, since there's no medical center there to treat them, people end up dying because they can't get the types of medical care they need, because they need to get to 100 or so miles where they're going. Sometimes they have to be airlifted. That costs thousands of dollars, and unless they have the right insurance, that will just not happen. Thus they die, and that is a continuing storybook going on there. Out in Alaska, the ferry operators reached a tentative agreement with the state of Alaska, and for roughly 30 communities out there, that the only way in is by a ferry or by aeroplane. I once knew this lady in Alaska, and she took me up in one of those bush planes, and an unforgettable ride. But she was accustomed to flying in and out of those areas, and you have to be a very good pilot to do that. And you are, landing on waterways. You are dealing with mountaintops and those kinds of things in Alaska. So that situation is solved. And let me get my cheat sheet here out. There's also a picket line in the picket line is in Appalachia. It's a coal mine. The medical center was at Spring Hill, incidentally, we were just talking about. And the protests, blocking protests, these workers have already been laid off by, I think, the sixth largest coal operator in some place called Blackfield. I think it's Blackfield, Kentucky. But anyway, nonetheless, it's in Appalachia. The plight of the coal industry, they have lost out to natural gas. And we'll look more into Blackfield. Hopefully we'll get it on the Monday Morning Quarterback, since it is in my notes. We've covered previously hospital closings. Nothing unusual there. And in Puerto Rico, San Juan, we have musical chairs. They have a disgrace, as they now call him, Ricardo Rocio, finally resigned. He appointed one of his cronies, somebody called Pedro Pierluisi, was sworn in as a replacement, but he was only confirmed by the House and not by the Senate, so Pierluisi may have to go. And that's where more musical chairs are coming there after swearing Pierluisi emerged at the residence to address the, this is from the Washington Post, the press, down to the wire maneuvered as it was called a recess appointment, and of course after damaging remarks he made about the victims, Mayor Roselio, about victims of Hurricane Maria. It was in 2017. So people are discussing with the government in general, just not Ricardo Rocio. The professor August Nimps also wrote about this. It's one of the first times that literally a popular movement pushed out a government in a U.S. territory, period. So this is a situation that is ongoing. They're not happy with this Pierluisi, I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name too badly here. Protesters have not been highly critical of Pierluisi before, but Friday they expressed disgust with the succession there. He was also tied to the notorious Federal Contract Board, a typical kickback operator there. The legislature, which is controlled by Pierluisi's a new progressive party, erupted in the chair, I would imagine. Anyway, from Carlos Roma here, he's a law professor with legal experts, question the validity of that amendment and believe that Pierluisi must be confirmed by the House and the Senate. Lawmakers and Pierluisi himself expressed concern that the continuing political uncertainty with the damage of Puerto Rico, that's kind of hard to do. And this board that he served on was created by Congress to restructure $70 billion in public debt after Puerto Rico declared a form of bankruptcy. There is a form for cities. So we'll see how all of this. He was also the non-voting representative in Congress from 2009 to 2017, and then he ran against Roselio in 2016 and lost. He served as a Justice Secretary under Rosello's father, Pedro Rosello, when he was the governor. So this nepotism, I mean, you have everything all working here at once. Let me just another Post article here about a woman that worked for Cambridge Analytica. Her name is Brittany Kaiser. She was from Texas, and she's 30 years old. She was a Democrat who became, of all things, the business development director for Cambridge Analytica. A film was created, a firm that was created to, she's also in a film, to elect Republicans. Massive wave of critical news reports there. So she did something drastic. She fled to Thailand, and she let a crew of filmmakers tag along. So she's seen both as a villain and as something else. The Great Hack is what it's called. It'll be released. Actually, was released Netflix documentary. It was released on the 24th of July, including images of Kaiser up to her shoulders in a giant pool on probably, blue sky in Thailand. Anyway, so she was a key figure there in this whole situation, but two important elements, is according to the Post, missing from the film. First, she had a private meeting with U.S. and British prosecutors, including the then special counsel Mueller office, which she detailed interviews with the Post. In those, she explained her visit with Julian Assange, that was in 2017, and how close she came in those hot days of the Cambridge Analytica scandal to turning over an entire hard drive to WikiLeaks, but he did it up with the U.S. Intelligence Service. Interesting. I used to make so many excuses to myself, she said. I used to make excuses to my friend and my family and why I was there, and it was okay to be working with those people there. Evidently her family had some financial problems also. She knew before the story blew up the rights of Americans had been violated. That's David Carroll. He's an associate professor of media design at the New School in New York. A plug there for the New School. A hero in the film for his dogged legal battle to gain access to data from Cambridge Analytica, big data we'll call it, collected on him amongst those who would think better of Kaiser, and she spoke up about her qualms with Cambridge Analytica before the scandal erupted. Well, many people don't. She was a graduate student in international human rights law at Middlesex University, that's in London, when she met this Alexander Nix. Now, he was a disgraced chief executive officer of Cambridge Analytica, which was created by the infamous Stephen Bannon, a white supremacist and at one time special advisor to D.J. Trump, sitting in the White House. Money was donated by Robert Mercer, and the parent company was called, SCL Group, meddled in elections around the world. Had Cambridge Analytica had a more specific brief to use the emerging science of big data to help Republicans win elections. And Nick, he appears in the film, and in much of the news coverage, particularly skill manipulation of his fellow human beings. He lured Kaiser to join the company with a forgettable line, "Let me get you a drink and steal your secrets." The film shows her in some exotic, it doesn't matter what it showed her in. Doing this, she even joined the NRA, a group at odds with her traditional political views. The Big Hack also detailed how Cambridge Analytica gathered up data on a massive scale using an online app to collect data on tens of millions of Facebook users who use the app and all of their friends, period. The goal was targeting them with message designed to work on voters' underlying psychologies. Perhaps the most appealing moment in the film came as a group orchestrated a voter suppression campaign in the Caribbean nation of Trinidad and Tobago that succeeded in helping a candidate of South Asian descent triumph when poor dark-skinned supporters mysteriously failed to cast votes. Also had a role in a Nigerian election there, working with an Israeli firm, obtained private emails from that nation's President Mohammed Birari when he was a candidate in 2015. That's according to Kedwald, I think is how to pronounce that name. It appeared in The Guardian and its sister newspaper, The Observer. Those emails, like the Democratic, basically the same scheme. And events kept Cadwalder from regarding Kaiser's efforts to redeem herself as entirely convincing, especially given that Kaiser decided to flee to Thailand shortly after the article about the SCL's meddling in Nigeria. Well, they were meddling all around the place, and I think what it highlights is how they were able to meddle in the elections in the U.S. With Poindexter, with the operative, what was his name? Anyway, I'll have to get to that in a minute here. And the Democratic Party emails here. She had the movie, now a memoir, will be published in October by Harper Collins. They publish a lot of right-wing stuff, only making Cat Walters worry. She also praised her for providing information. The moment of clarity began turning away from Cambridge Analytica and its sharply conservative, Fox News-driven world the night of Trump's victory. Well, a little bit too late there. But understanding some of these things, she didn't get a promotion. That's usually what brings many of these so-called whistleblower types out. She met with Julian Assange. She said she gave, $200 in Bitcoin to the group. That was in 2011. And what brought her and Julian together was the death of well-known human rights lawyer John R.W.D. Jones, who was hit by a train in a PN suicide. Who knows? He was probably killed. Anyway, we don't know. Kaiser considered Jones, who represented Assange, as a mentor with a mutual friend that Kaiser and Assad met to commiserate. Anyway, she agreed in concept but was unable to arrange a meeting quickly. Jones' death happened in April of 2016 as the Cambridge Analytica campaign was accelerating in the aftermath of Trump taking office, with Kaiser increasingly questioning her life choices. The idea of meeting with Julian Assange came there. She met some character named James at Harrods for tea. Well, typical thing there. And finally went to the Ecuadorian embassy to meet Julian Assange. Anyway, very little came of that. Julian Assange was talking about Trump was a better choice than Clinton would have been, referring to some of the decisions she made, as no doubt, as Secretary of State. Anyway, this is kind of a rehash here of this James guy. She even gave up his phone number, which obviously no longer worked, as she was visiting San Francisco at the time, getting word that the authorities both in the U.S. and England would be looking for her. Kaiser agreed to meet with James a few weeks later. This is James. She recalled James say nothing will be held back. And WikiLeaks does it. This is sort of like the information they were able to get on those emails between Clinton and her people there. So again, this story here, a married couple here, Najur, I hope I pronounced that right, and Kareem Amir, the married couple who were working on a film on the dangers of modern technology. They claimed they found Kaiser quickly upon her emergence in the coverage, and it was Amir who put her in touch with someone at the FBI. Well, that shows, where some of these people actually are. And they also mentioned Nix here and the $5 billion fine of Facebook, which slap on the face there. And I mean, this is all basically the same thing. The article reported that Kaiser met discuss happened during the election, and that Kaiser claimed to have funneled money to WikiLeaks. Well, $200 supposedly. So in other words, a little drama here, but not very much drama at all here. But what it does show is some patterns here with Julian Assange, the meetings there, the filmmakers, they're tied to the FBI. This stinks of high water. There's no doubt about that. And this whole thing, a lot of it is basically sleight of hand. So be very, very careful of how you absorb some of this. The Great Hack was there, no doubt about that. Cambridge Analytica was there. But for Cambridge Analytica and these people that they got their information, and also let me throw in the Brexit. She's dropped by one host, by the Brexiteers. This is in January 2017 after and a deployables ball after DJ Trump during his inauguration. Anyway, just this whole sick thing. But she was in it for the money. So is she a heroine, a hero, or was she just a mercenary there? Well, she was partially mercenary. Partially, it appears that when the British authorities and the American authorities were looking very, very close at her, she caved in, basically there. And also Cambridge Analytica in the basic saga there in the UK, how they manipulate the data. But this firm in Nigeria, an Israeli firm, obtained private emails. Well, it's the same situation. The Podesta, I was thinking of John Podesta? Yeah, John Podesta's emails are there, and how they were obtained, and not by Russian hackers. Tells you a little bit. Sometimes you can tell when you read these things of what is actually going on. And look at my time up there. Okay, we'll move away from this one. And let's go to Uncle Carl Rove while we got Uncle here, and see what he is talking about. He's writing on the 1st of August 2019 in the Wall Street Journal and on his own little blog. Big ideas may re-elect DJ Trump. He says that in a qualified thing. I get a little tired of Democrats afraid of big ideas. What Bernie Sanders said, no doubt about that, and he's correct. But Democrats will lose in 2020 if enough Americans believe those big ideas threaten their families, communities, values, and pocketbooks. Talking of political revolution may rev up Democratic socialists like Bernie, but for the ordinary American, it's too much and too radical, he hopes. The most obvious example is Medicare for All, co-sponsored by 4 of the hopefuls, Kamala Harris, Senator Booker, and Kristen Gillibrand, and Liz Warren, would make it unlawful for companies to provide employee health insurance for private insurers to sell coverage that duplicates benefits of new government plan. Now, they can still sell coverage, but they couldn't have duplicates of it. The whole idea is selling supplements. This is Medicare Advantage and the relationship of Medicare Advantage to what they now claim ordinary Medicare. And I have Medicare, so I understand these things. Anyway, it's laughable to think that 170 million Americans who have private coverage would be excited about losing their plans, and their doctors, well, they do that every day, because they are forced to go out of so-called network and be penalized. Nor are they eager to lose control over their health care decisions, but the insurers more and more every day making these decisions, at least attempt to do it. I know from a plan that I have that they have a pharmacologist to evaluate the medications that I take, claiming to make them more effective, but they're talking about cost-effective. Now they add the long wait lists for appointments and procedures common to single-payer health care systems, and huge middle-class tax increases need to pay for Medicare for all. And this tag has been all over the place. $32 trillion tax plan. It would be easy to see why swing voters would be horrified if Sanders' plan is part of the 2020 Democratic platform. Well, the U.S. is about an $18 trillion economy, $19 trillion, I think. So, but what they're talking about, this would be over many, many, many years, and that figure is wrong. We've looked at various studies, and we've not been able to come up with an exact figure. You can't, but a lot of Medicare for All would be based upon the premise of the Affordable Care Act and building on it also, where a lot of it would be a preventive. Now, when you start talking about Medicare itself, well, you have problems. Harris released her own plan on Monday, rejecting Sanders' approach and saying she favors a role for private insurance company. Well, she's always been an agent there. But she's being duplicitous when Sanders phases out private insurance in 4 years. Harris' plan has a 10-year transition, during which the new government plan would be automatically enroll newborns and the uninsured, with the deadlines looming, and many companies would end coverage early and leaving employees to be automatically enrolled in the new single-payer program. What counts for moderation these days, a Bernie care that kills employer-provided health care is a little more slowly. This Harris new government-run program would cover all medically necessary services, same as Medicare pretty much does, and the role of private insurance would be augmented to those services. Only two supplemental coverage mentions of cosmetic surgery, health expenses incurred during foreign travel. Sanders and Harris, and you can see what he's trying to do here, linked them together, have forgotten an important lesson of the Affordable Care Act. After it passed in 2010, that's 9 years ago, it became widely unpopular as Americans worried they couldn't keep their plans, their doctors control their health care. By Election Day 2010, the Real Clear average of polls found 40% of Americans rated Obamacare favorably, while 51% unfavorably. Well, yet today, 47% are for it, and 41% against it. Why the shift? Probably because while many people lost their plans, the vast majority of Americans with private coverage are able to keep it. Only 8.5 million, this is not correct, get theirs through the ACA exchange. The attitude of the public sector to be, since it doesn't affect me, I'm okay with Obamacare. Well, as the late Jerry Pippin said, as people get accustomed to Obamacare, they would like it, and that's what has happened here. So Uncle Carl's covering his ass here is dramatically different. It would change everyone's circumstances, and that's not only revolutionary change the Democratic presidential candidates are pushing. The Green New Deal is co-sponsored by 6: Senator Booker, Gillibrand, Harris, Sanders, and Amy Klobuchar. Endorsed, incidentally, Amy Klobuchar made the cut, so she'll be around for September and October. At least 3 other contenders. It would touch everyone. Stop using oil, gas in 10 years, retrofitting every house and every building in the country, ending traditional agriculture. Well, that's not. In commercial air travel, guaranteeing every American a job and more. Well, again, this is what they would like to portray it as, free stuff, etc. 10 years, there's no doubt about that, the 10-year plan. That would be 2030. As far as retrofitting every house and building, that would not happen. Commercial air travel, well, some of that has been cut down by telecommuting and everything else. As far as guaranteed jobs, yes, because of capitalism and more, that will have to be done. Robotics, AI has appeared there. Those are some of the things we'll see more and more of it coming along. And let me move along here and grab some more of our news stories here. We need to particularly get the baseball scores. I think we have them around here from last night. At least we'll be able to get some of them. What's his name? Ruffledge or Radcliffe? Ruffledge, I think. The guy that was going to national security has been officially dropped by DJ Trump. He is no longer in, as they say, the scheme of things. He is out of the ballpark. He gave it up and said he would remain in Congress. So that changes some some of what we talked about last night, in that the Republicans, since some had been resigning right and left here, searching to find our baseball scores. We had them here. It's a different presentation there. And here we go. And we'll get these from ESPN. We have most of them here. I tuned into the Yankees-Red Sox game. And, of course, the Yankees pulled it out finally. Was an interesting game in that. But this is for the Sox, as far as the Sox are concerned. This has been an off year for them. And it will continue to be an off year for the Sox, as far as the Sox are concerned here. And let me see. Yeah, this is on August the 2nd. We're still messing around here with it. Incidentally, I saw and I don't know, we have it here, a Rasmussen poll that showed this would have been on the 2nd of August. Bernie Sanders ahead of DJ Trump by 2 points from Rasmussen, which is a Republican polling house. I'm not sure we'll get the scoreboard up or not. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Play around with it a little bit, I suppose. And see exactly where we're going with ESPN here. And some of our technical difficulties that have been plaguing us from time to time. This is a Hall of Fame game. I'm not sure I would look at the date on this, but anyway, hadn't heard much. The Broncos won the game 14 to 10 over the Falcons. That was a Hall of Fame game. They used to have that usually in later August, but I suppose. Yeah, we do have we have. Okay. This is actually not the right one here. Hey, we'll get the scoreboard for the right day here. The Hall of Fame game, yeah, it had come and had gone. That was the wrong display there. Twins were 11 to 9 over the Royals. The Cubs beat the Brewers in Wrigley Field 6 to 2. And this was 4 to 2 was the Yankees over the Sox in New York. The Pirates and Mets, the Pirates 8 to 4. The Blue Jays 5 to 2 over the Orioles in Camden Yard. And Cleveland is 7 to 3 over the Angels in Cleveland. The Reds beat Atlanta 5 to 2. The Rangers beat the Tigers in Texas 5 to 4. And finally, the Astros and Mariners, the Astros at 10 to 2. Astros had 12 hits, no errors, and Seattle 3 hits in 1 error. You usually don't win a game doing that. So that's kind of Alex Wood, okay. Moved around a little bit there, had a strong showing. Just looking at what some of the pitchers were doing, and we'll see if I don't know if we have that. I don't know if we have the real clear politics one here or not. Anyway, on the Monday morning quarterback, we will go over some of the polling that we have. And we'll check in with Charlie Cook and company there to see exactly where they are. We, of course, had 2 debates. Incidentally, we have 2 programs on the network. One, I believe, was, let's see, what was it? Debate, the first debate in the right-wing debate. Basically, that's what it was. In Detroit was the first night of the debate, and the second night we called it confusing debate because the debaters, not Bernie, Bernie wasn't there. This was Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. They basically all forgot their lines, and that's one of the takeaways to remember and bring that out. We're still working on Al Franken. We'll get that out. And our open source report, as some of the things we need to get around to. And the game, the inductions, I should say, into the Baseball Hall of Fame. We need to get that one out also. That'll be on All About Sports. So we got a number of little things we've been working on around here, and we need to devote some time to those. We'll get around to those. I'm looking at my notes here, and yeah, we'll get to it. It's nice as we wind down here. It was an interesting thing. It was the BBC, the rights for robots. Robots all around. That was an example of a robot scrubbing the floor at a Walmart. And we expect a robot to be scrubbing the floor. And people laughed at the thing, pushed the thing around, etc. But now the robot perhaps would be able to report them. Nonetheless, have a good weekend, everyone. On the 3rd of August, 2019. The week that was. And I suppose the last parting shot here is the economy is not doing as well as it did. And we'll have that on This Week in Economics. And we'll look at some deficit, how international trade is going here. A lot of uncertainty going around here. 160,000 jobs created. But we'll look a little bit at what kind of jobs are being created. The steam is running out. Interest rates was cut 0.25 or 25 basis points. There, no big effect there at all. And we'll have a report from the Fed. I'm not sure how we're going to do this with Jerome Powell. We may actually do two separate reports. Not sure. We'll take care of it.